Most fans of music would not consider blackbear to be a good artist. His music is a weird mix of pop, trap, emo rap, and EDM that is rather divisive over whether it is actually pleasant to listen to. But if the dark, lo-fi beats do not scare you off, then the narcissistic lyrics will. The persona blackbear portrays in his music has zero redeeming qualities. In nearly every song, Bear is either going on a drug-fueled sex rampage through Los Angeles, or cruelly ranting about how much all of his exes suck and make his life hell. He objectifies every woman in his life, never takes accountability for any of his actions, and he even openly sings about how he is jealous of more successful mainstream musicians. I mean, this guy's most popular song is literally called Hot Girl Bummer. We are not dealing with a Nas or Kendrick Lamar here. However, despite all of the detestable, degenerate behavior that blackbear engages in and promotes with his music, he is one of my favorite artists of all time. Now, I enjoy the music parts of blackbear's music, but I am nowhere near knowledgeable enough on song structures, melodies, or anything like that to be able to explain why. But even if I were, it would not really change much. Either you think blackbear has a good voice and is a good producer, or you do not. That part is subjective. However, I believe that blackbear is also one of the most misunderstood songwriters currently working right now. Because, while yes, blackbear is misogynistic, spiteful, and despicable, he is also literally me.
Well, let me get this straight. You think that killing those guys is funny?
I do. And I'm tired of pretending it's not.
The best way to describe the phenomenon of literally me that has taken over the internet the past few years is that it consists of characters in media, typically a movie or television show, that should not be relatable yet still are. Characters like the Joker, Travis Bickle, Homelander, and Greg Heffley are all terrible people who commit terrible actions. And yet millions of people across the world still find something sympathetic about them to admire. The exact reason people relate to these fictional characters differs for each one. Some people relate to the Joker because he is a victim of an unforgiving society that unfairly punishes the mentally ill and lower class. However, those same people might also sympathize with Patrick Bateman, a wealthy Wall Street businessman who in real life would be one of the people screwing over the Joker, because it is shown in American Psycho that not even the people at the top are truly content with their lives. However, what not many people know about Patrick Bateman is that he actually has a brother, Sean, who has his own story, The Rules of Attraction. Sean is very similar to Patrick in that both of them are very successful and privileged, yet feel immense amounts of depression and are not satisfied with anything in their lives. While Patrick takes his frustrations out by literally killing and torturing people, Sean instead covers up his insecurities by abusing drugs and having sex with any girl or guy he can get his dick in. While in the moment, these hookups make Sean feel like a god, when he wakes up the next morning, he is still missing any real sense of love or purpose, and he goes back to his life of never-ending depression and apathy. The Rules of Attraction is a great movie that deserves its own video. But I bring it up here because the movie's themes perfectly match up with blackbear's discography. While geographically, they may be on two opposite ends of America, blackbear and Sean Bateman are practically the same person. Both are deeply unhappy individuals who have blatantly obvious shortcomings as a person, yet neither of them show any signs of wanting to improve or change their behavior. They are content with being uncontent. Sean Bateman would rather have sex with 100 different people he will never talk to again than settle down and get an actual partner, even though he knows that the latter would be so much more satisfying. Likewise, blackbear would rather stay up for 3 days straight on cocaine than admit that maybe it's him that's the problem, because taking responsibility for your actions, as honorable as it is taught to every kid in America, is oftentimes impractical and very difficult to do. And in blackbear's music, nowhere is this theme better shown than in his 2017 album, Digital Druglord. Digital Druglord was blackbear's most popular record up until Hot Girl Bummer released, and it is still what I think most people familiar with his music think of when discussing him. As I suggested at the start of the video, it was not very well received when it came out, despite its commercial success. It was criticized for having all the typical trademarks of a blackbear project. Misogynistic, whiny lyrics by a LA man-child partying his life away, and blaming all of his issues on others. Obviously, this makes it the perfect blackbear album to analyze and present as his best work. The album is only 10 tracks and 30 minutes long, and I believe you can divide it up into 3 different parts. There's the intro track, which serves as a condensed version of the whole album, tracks 2 through 6, which are generally the stereotypical blackbear breakup songs, in tracks 7 through 10, where Bear's mask begins to slip a bit and it becomes clear that he is to blame for everything in his life second. I will be going through each of these tracks in chronological order, because that is how listening to an album works.
My nose is burning, too much
Hell Is Where I Dreamt of You and Woke Up Alone is the opening song on the album, and it perfectly captures the spirit of blackbear's music. It is a dark, bare-bones piano ballad where Bear openly addresses his drug and sex addiction that he'll be engaging in throughout the rest of the album. However, in typical blackbear fashion, despite acknowledging that he is in need of moderation and probably going to die, he shows no inclination of actually trying to improve himself. Instead, in the chorus, which is pretty much the song's title, it is revealed that he is blaming his depression on some girl he hooked up with in the past. Already, the first track makes it clear through its storytelling that, while blackbear is struggling with his mental health, he is not really a sympathetic figure. He is refusing to take accountability for his own destructive behavior, and instead shifts the blame to the other people in his life. I also really like the line, "And when friends hit my phone, all they want is a repost." While the focus on the album is on the blackbear persona, the project can also be viewed as an indictment of LA influencer culture, just like how The Rules of Attraction was a critique of the average American college experience. It is not a groundbreaking thing to say that plenty of people in LA act exactly like how Bear does in his music, covering up their insecurities with drugs, sex, and money. However, LA culture also has a reputation of being fake and performative. Here, Bear is saying that whenever his friends check in on him, they are not actually concerned with his clearly deteriorating mental state. Instead, they are only concerned with whether or not blackbear will promote their music on his social media. This idea of LA culture being just as bad as Bear will come up a few other times throughout the album, and I will try to draw attention to it whenever it is relevant.
I got 2 moods. Sleep is for the week, sleeping for a week.
The next track on the album is Moods. It's a chill lo-fi trap song filled with plenty of braggadocious claims from blackbear, drawing attention to his lavish dinners, expensive sneakers, and how he can have 2 of anything he wants. It also features a guest appearance from rapper 24 Hours. I will be honest, this song is probably my least favorite on the album. There are not any hints of irony or something deeper going on underneath the surface. And unlike the next few songs I'll talk about, there are not any ridiculous one-liners from blackbear. It's just a generic, mellow trap song on a project that features more interesting music. So I'm just gonna move on to the third track.
I miss the old you, the one that held me down and kinda told the truth.
I Miss the Old You is the next song on the album. As the title suggests, the song is about one of Bear's exes, and how he does not like the person that she is becoming. If you do not pay close attention to the lyrics, it might just seem like a generic, if a bit dramatic, breakup song. However, upon closer examination, it is clear that Bear is just as at fault for the breakup as the girl. While he does air out some valid grievances with his ex, the way in which he describes the failed relationship is so mean-spirited and spiteful, it is hard to actually take him seriously. When someone unironically says that they're mad their ex never told them, "I love you, daddy," it makes you wonder what actually went down in the relationship. On top of this, in the chorus, blackbear switches from saying he misses the old you to saying he misses the old me, which is the first time since the intro track that Bear's mask of cocaine-induced happiness slips. He realizes, if only for a moment, that he does not like the person he is becoming. However, he immediately follows this up by blaming his mental state on the drugs he does and the ex this song is about. Not only is he again shifting blame for his actions, but he follows up an admission of his unhappiness with a completely deplorable statement that erases any sympathy you might have for him. This habit of saying something slightly sympathetic, followed by something completely psychopathic to diminish what he just said, will happen a few more times throughout the project. The last thing I want to mention about this song is that blackbear reveals he does not actually know how many people are in the Migos. While this probably was just a mistake left in the album, I personally think it's funnier to imagine this as part of blackbear's character. Bear is able to recognize and name drop other celebrities and rappers, but does not actually know anything about them. Doing so would require him to actually think about other people's lives, and not just see them as names on the Billboard Hot 100 that he wishes were lower than his own. This one line, even if it was unintentional, adds to the atmosphere of LA influencer hostility this album reeks.
If I could go back to that day we met, I probably would just stay in bed.
Do Re Mi is the next song on the project. This is another breakup song, and it was also the most successful song on the album. thanks to its hook, Do Re Mi Fa So Fucking Done With You, going viral. Unlike the last song, blackbear actually does a pretty good job making this girl actually sound worse than he is. Not only is he with another cheater who spends a lot of Bear's money, but she also spends her free time gossiping about everyone else in LA and crashing Bear's car, apparently. While this song probably provides the least to the blackbear is a terrible person narrative, due to how much emphasis is placed on his ex, it does add to the overall aesthetic of the album. Many people point out how blackbear is almost always the problem in the relationships in his songs. And while I have said in this video that I generally agree with the sentiment, the truth is almost never as black and white as Bear is the problem, or the girl is the problem. LA is filled with insecure narcissists who are all given a half-assed attempt to find love, yet cannot bring themselves to actually commit to a real relationship for one reason or another. And even if they do wind up forming a genuine connection with a person, the chances of that person feeling the same way are pretty slim. This is not only a problem that Bear struggles with, but also the models and wannabe musicians he hooks up with, who eventually leave him for someone slightly better. Bear paints LA not as a place where dreams come true and stars are made, but as a hellhole filled with a bunch of lonely, desperate, terrible people hooking up with each other and then getting surprised when their loveless relationships crumble to pieces. This may not be a revolutionary concept, but I think Bear portrays this idea in his music in an interesting and creative manner, as it is pretty unique to put on a persona that is so openly an asshole, and yet refuses to change their behavior in any meaningful way. There is also a Gucci Mane remix of this song that got pretty popular. While I personally enjoy the remix more as a standalone song, as Gucci does a surprisingly good guest feature, it does feel pretty out of place on the album and makes the song less connected to the rest of the project. However, the music video for this remix is up there with the I'm the One music video, for being one of the most ridiculous videos I have ever seen. I cannot for the life of me tell how much of the comedy is supposed to be intentional or not. Some highlights include a 10-year-old white boy absolutely busting down during Gucci Mane's part, blackbear's love interest taking a piss on a Range Rover, and this one pleasantly plump kid who has on the biggest shit-eating grin every time the camera shows him.
I would wish you the best, but you already had.
Do Re Mi is followed by the song Wish You the Best, which is yet another breakup song, and easily blackbear's most toxic. The song opens with the line, "Just use my last 1% to text you that shit wasn't worth it," followed by him proclaiming how he is probably going to miss his next flight, just so he does not have to see this girl. The chorus is just as spiteful, with Bear repeating that he will wish you the best although you already had it. Bear has clearly taken a page out of Future's book on this song. Things get a little more interesting during the second verse. Like on I Miss the Old You, Bear actually admits that he has been feeling down lately, and dreams of quitting his fuckboy habits and starting a family. However, he then says that, instead of kids, the only thing he is raising is his bank account, and sings about doing lines of cocaine off of models. Again, as soon as Bear confesses the slightest bit of unhappiness he has, he deflects to an unrelated subject, this time that being his material wealth and addictions. The song serves to further highlight the duality of blackbear's character. He is both an unapologetic narcissist, who shows little sympathy for anyone in his life, and a deeply troubled individual who desperately needs someone to step in for him, but because of his antisocial behavior, he is unwilling to let anyone actually help him. Instead, he scares away anyone he gets close with. And nowhere in the album is this better showcase than track 6, Juicy Sweatsuits.
Tell me why my ex is besties now, acting like it stressed me.
Juicy Sweatsuits is a song that portrays blackbear as such a toxic, judgmental LA asshole that any unironic sympathy you may have left for him disintegrates by the end of the song. He is like a human tornado tearing through LA, ruining the lives of every girl he hooks up with. Bear goes beyond simply taunting his past flings and straight up roasts them. He has not yet fully given in to his depression, and still tries to retain some moral superiority over these girls, despite obviously having none. He makes fun of their clothes, their drug habits, their personalities or lack thereof, and he even threatens to post revenge porn. At this point on the album, it is no longer a surprise that none of Bear's girlfriends have tried to help him change his life in any meaningful way. But for as awful as Bear comes off, it is still fascinating to hear him sing about these failed relationships. The double agent put it best when he talked about a similar song Bear made.
I enjoy this song for the same reason I enjoy shows like Hannibal. I don't empathize with the man in the story. I don't think he's making the world better. Frankly, I'm disgusted and repulsed by his antics. But there's something intriguing about someone so arrogant and brazen as to proudly display his evil to the world. It's just fascinating watching someone interact with the people around him with such awful intentions, to watch a monster be a monster in his own little simulated world.
Like I said when talking about Do Re Mi, there is probably a small amount of truth to what Bear is saying. Again, it is not controversial to say that there are plenty of shallow, basic girls living in LA, but for as generic and aimless as these girls may be, Bear is not better than them. In fact, his line, "Insecure about who you are, you're selfish and you know it," perfectly sums up Bear's character on this album. It is easy for Bear to watch his past hookups waste their lives away with drugs and sex, judging from afar, but it is a lot harder for him to acknowledge that he is guilty of this exact same behavior. If these girls were still with him instead of G-Eazy or Quavo, then he would have no issue with how they are behaving. But now that their relationship is over, Bear feels no attachment to the well-being of any of these women, despite how much they actually have in common. The song also features a verse from Juicy J. Reactions to this feature are mostly mixed and negative, and I will be honest, instead of the first few times I heard his part, he kinda ruined the song for me. But it has grown on me a little bit just because of how absurd it is. The lyrical content of the verse also fits the aesthetic of the song, although I think Juicy J could have actually gone harder on the girls he raps about. Overall, it's a very entertaining song to cap off the half of the album where Bear is still pretending to be mentally well.
Sign it over, I could give you double, baby.
Moving on to the next track on the album, we have Double. This is a very interesting song, as while up to this point, Bear has spent the previous tracks making fun of and mocking his exes. In this one, he seems to be genuinely interested in reconnecting with one of them. Like in the song Moods, Bear flaunts his wealth throughout the track, and reiterates that he can have double of anything he wants. But while on Moods, this flexing was done as an ego boost for himself. Here, it's done in a drunken attempt at convincing this girl to break up with her new boyfriend. Bear is finally starting to realize that, deep down, he does actually care about at least one of his past hookups more than he lets on. They certainly were not holding him back like Bear claimed on the previous song. However, he is still unable to fully get over his feelings and mature, and instead covers his insecurities with his money. This idea is built upon in the second verse, where Bear starts off by acknowledging his worsening drug and alcohol habits. But he immediately follows this up with him boasting about his success in the music industry. Yet again, Bear cannot go a single sentence where he admits some of his problems without trying to deflect to something else. The most interesting lyric comes up in the chorus, where Bear asks this girl why she is waiting on a man that is never growing up. Bear straight up admits to the childish and unfulfilling lifestyle he lives, but he passes it off like it is a good thing. He seems fully aware that no self-respecting person would ever want to be with him, and yet refuses to change anyway, hoping that this girl is just as immature as he is. This whole song represents the tragedy of digital druglord. Bear is so obviously a man who is stuck in a bad state of mind, but due to his own narcissism, he is unwilling to make any changes or adjustments to his life. He is doomed to slowly march to a fate of drug abuse, failed relationships, and gold chains.
And you won't call me on the phone. It's so good, I wanted that. It's so good.
Things only continue to go downhill for blackbear in the next song, which is aptly titled "If I Could, I Would Feel Nothing." In all the previous songs, I have used a little bit of critical thinking and inference to explain how Bear establishes the core themes of the album. Here, all subtext is dropped, and Bear flat out admits his life sucks but he does not care. The first verse begins with the line, "If I could, I would feel nothing, that's the truth and I don't care," which is followed by, "Mix prescriptions with prescriptions, it's not right but the life's not fair." Following this brutally honest opening, Bear again tries to flex his material wealth and bad bitches he gets to the audience. But shockingly, Bear says the quiet part out loud, revealing that, underneath it all, the truth is that I really feel like shit. Bear expresses feelings of guilt over his lifestyle in the second verse. He admits how he feels he sold his soul to make it big in the music industry, and he repeatedly states how he has been praying to God to make his life better. Despite Bear finally starting to sound a little human, with the whole context of the album, it is still a bit hard to fully empathize with them. Just 2 tracks ago, he was roasting his exes for having the same drug and alcohol problems that he is now complaining about. On top of that, a few other lines in the song are a bit questionable. Bear complains about how he is not a drug dealer or a killer, and therefore should not be suffering as much as he is, implying that he still views himself as a good person, or at least not as bad as serious criminals. And while dedicating yourself to religion is a pretty common way for people who have been struggling to reignite their passion for life, Bear's descriptions of his prayers do not come off as a guy who has seriously found religion. They make him sound like he is an insecure LA narcissist who thinks that he can party as hard as he wants, just as long as he remembers to think about God once or twice a year. Bear is not actually handing himself over to God in this song. This is just yet another way Bear rationalizes the poor decisions he makes. However, the best part of the song is the post-chorus and outro. There, Bear switches from a general rant about his life to describing another hookup he has recently had. Bear predicts that, after they have sex, the girl will never call him back. He repeats the mantras, "It's all good, I wanted that," and "no feelings, no strings attached," multiple times, implying that he actually wanted to enter a real relationship with this girl. But in the outro, when Bear continues to repeat these mantras, he instead sings that he was the one who never called her back. I think that Bear, by repeatedly telling himself those lies over and over in his head, succeeded in convincing himself he did not want a real relationship with his most recent hookup. Despite Bear acknowledging his faults and even owning up to some of them throughout the song, by the end, he has not changed in any way. He managed to reconvince himself that his life of meaningless sex and drugs is actually awesome, and something that he should continue to engage in, and this brings us to the climax of the album, Chateau.
Sweet 23 at the chateau. Had a hard man, I'm trying to get it back, dog.
In the penultimate track on Digital Druglord, Bear attempts to return to his self-absorbed lyrics about his hookups with LA models that he sang about earlier on the album. But despite the lyrics still being as braggadocious as ever, here the lines come off as a lot more pitiful, as it is abundantly clear that Bear is projecting his insecurities onto this girl. While there was always some irony and hypocrisy behind Bear's brags, the entire previous track was literally dedicated to how depressed he was. At least before, you could argue that he wasn't conscious of the truth about his situation. Now, he understands what is really going on, and yet is choosing to do nothing and act like everything is fine. Him mentioning his age is only more depressing, as he is no longer a dumb 20-year-old who just moved to LA and wants to experience everything he can, no matter how stupid. He is a veteran LA douchebag who is still wasting his life away. He even states how he does not want to get married to his girl even though she wants to. Additionally, Bear sings about his paranoia that his friends in LA do not actually care about him, even his day ones. This is in stark contrast to the previous song, where Bear reminisced on how his OGs warned him not to go down the rabbit hole of cocaine that Bear cannonballed into. By continuing his life of degeneracy, he has betrayed the trust of all of his old friends he had before he was famous. Although Bear has gotten it into his head that they were the ones who betrayed him, at the end of the verse, Bear describes in detail the prelude between him and this girl having sex, before repeatedly chanting, "No love, no love, no love." While he was trying desperately to convince himself that this hookup was going to be fulfilling, when he finally actively participates in it, he is left with no other choice than to acknowledge what is really happening. There is no love or genuine connection between him and this girl. As soon as the girl meets a guy richer than Bear, or when Bear meets a girl with a bigger ass than hers, their relationship will end. No matter what, Bear will wake up the next morning, alone, depressed, and hungover. Chateau is also very interesting song structure-wise, which is something even an idiot like me can recognize. It is essentially one long verse repeated twice, with the electronic production gradually increasing in volume until it thunderously explodes at the no love part. To me, this symbolizes Bear's intrusive thoughts warning him of this relationship growing louder, until he can no longer ignore them. The song ends with Bear repeating the words, "White linen, white rose," drawing even more attention to the only two things that bring him any emotion in his life: sex and cocaine. There is no love to be found in Bear's life, just temporary pleasures. In the moment, Bear might trick himself into thinking these vices are enough, but whenever he sobers back up, nothing has changed. He is no more fulfilled than he was before, and he still roams LA as an empty husk of a person, being well aware of what he needs to do to find true happiness, but unable to actually pull himself together long enough to fully commit. This brings us to the last song, Make Daddy Proud.
Proud of you, proud of you. Go ahead, girl, make that.
I believe that this final track, in context of the full album, might be the best one on the project. However, it is also the most deceptive song in its messaging, and even on my first few listens, I did not really understand it. On the surface, it seems like yet another song where Bear is angry at an ex, this time with more emphasis being placed on how the girl is a gold digger for another guy. Track sequence wise, it seems weird to make this the conclusion to the album, as it is pretty similar to songs like I Miss the Old You. At best, the song is indicative of the cycle that Bear is trapped in, having made no progress in self-improvement, despite being forced to acknowledge his obvious faults on the past few tracks. But at worst, it completely discredits those last few songs, and throws into question how self-aware Bear really was throughout the project. But, after listening to the album some more, I have two other interpretations of this song, the first requiring some additional context. Make Daddy Proud was produced by one of Bear's frequent collaborators, Jeremy Zucker, and Zucker used this beat on his own album for his song Heavy. Heavy is a song about how Zucker's girlfriend is mentally draining him, and that she is figuratively weighing him down. Listening to these songs individually, you might not make any connection between the two, like I did for like 3 months. But, after I literally unintentionally played them one after the other, I actually think these songs are about the same girl. In Bear's song, he describes his ex-girlfriend as manipulative and a gold digger. In Zucker's song, he describes his current girlfriend as a burden he has to deal with. I think Zucker's version is from the perspective of the girl's current boyfriend, who is only starting to catch on to her behavior, while Bear's version is from the perspective of her ex-boyfriend, who sees the girl for who she really is. So, you can think about this song as a sort of bonus track to the album. It adds to the album's narrative of LA being a shallow shithole, while serving primarily as a companion track to Zucker's song. However, it was only when writing this video, and paying even closer attention to the lyrics, that I found the second interpretation of the song. Throughout this album, Bear has sung at length about his drug and alcohol abuse. At a certain point, it becomes a little redundant to listen to, and I am sure you've gotten tired of me explaining this theme secondhand. But, here's the thing about this last track. There are zero references to drugs or alcohol. Not once does Bear mention drinking a bottle of vodka, snorting cocaine, or doing anything along those lines. On this track, he is completely sober. What might seem like a minor detail, I actually think is the most important creative decision on the album. For the past 9 tracks, Bear has relied on drugs and alcohol for everything in his life. It is how he feels happy, how he stays sane, and most importantly, something he can blame all of his problems on whenever he gets pressed. But on this track, all of this is absent, yet his repulsive personality remains. Bear can no longer blame his antisocial behavior on his addictions. While they obviously did not help, millions of people across the world regularly get drunk, high, or both, and do not magically turn into psychopaths. At the end of the day, it was Bear and Bear alone who is responsible for his actions and personality. Getting off the drugs only made this reality more apparent. Up until this point, I have left out some context for this album. Throughout this video, I am sure you've been wondering how much of Bear's persona is the real him. Nobody can honestly say for sure, as none of us personally know the guy, but I do know some things that can give us an idea. When Bear wrote this album, he was in the hospital. While on a tour, he was having stomach cramps that worsened into throwing up blood, and he was eventually diagnosed with pancreatitis, a disease that's most common cause is alcohol abuse. He would later speak in interviews how, in the weeks leading up to his extended hospital stay, he was drinking a bottle of liquor a day. Even after being released from the hospital, he was prescribed a plethora of medications he had to take in order to stay alive. This incident clearly had a colossal effect on blackbear, and was the wake-up call he unfortunately needed in his real life. To me, Digital Druglord was Bear's way of dealing with and understanding what he was going through. All of the narcissistic lyrics Bear wrote and sang on this album are probably based on thoughts and opinions he held at some point in his life. But now, when he is at his lowest point, he is able to reflect on his antisocial behavior through his musical persona, and portray it in his music for what it really is. A desperate cover-up for insecurity. The last track is the best example of this. In the context of the album, Bear may have gotten sober after the brutal realization at Wood's Chateau, but he still has a long way to go before he has fully reinvented himself. Getting off the drugs is only the first step in a long journey, one that Bear is still going through to this day. Much to most people's chagrin, Bear continued making music after Digital Druglord, and while he will still release tracks with his LA asshole persona, these songs seem a lot less sincere now, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. In Bear's personal life, he has settled down. He has 2 children with his wife, and all signs point to them being happily married. Bear does still struggle with occasionally relapsing into alcohol abuse, which is something he is very open about. But he is no longer digging himself towards an early grave. His most recent project was a collab album with Mike Posner, and unlike Digital Druglord, the album is filled with lyrics of conscious self-reflection. On the penultimate track, Journey of One/On My Way, Bear sings about how he wishes he could redo his early adult years, never touching a drink or a line of cocaine, so that he would not have to deal with all of his health problems he suffers from today. But at the same time, he is proud of how far he has come, and is truly, finally fulfilled with his life. The narcissism, spite, jealousy, and dissatisfaction that fill every second of Digital Druglord do not make the album feel inhuman. On the contrary, these elements are what make the album so great, and emblematic of a lot of today's culture. Just as Bear was so quick to comment on his ex's bad behavior while blatantly ignoring his own, we are easily able to recognize and criticize Bear's actions. Yet most of us would not openly admit that we suffer from a lot of the same issues. Obviously, very few of us have as much wealth, and therefore as much sex and drugs, as Bear. But you don't have to be a wealthy LA douchebag to feel a sense of superiority over an ex-partner, basically judge a person you walk by on the street, or act selfishly. If Bear was less judgmental towards others, or if he was more open to immediate change, then the project would be a lot less interesting. But because Bear's persona is so transparently hypocritical, it exposes the truth behind not only his character, but a lot of ours as well. It's easy to look at someone else and point out all their faults and how they could improve their life. It's much harder to not only recognize your own shortcomings, but then actively change your behavior for the better, to work towards self-improvement. Oftentimes, we indefinitely postpone searching for true happiness in favor of experiencing a lot of short-term pleasures that ultimately do not give us any long-term fulfillment. If someone as repulsive as blackbear can pull himself together long enough to wake up from his slow march towards the abyss and turn his life around, finding genuine satisfaction in his relationships, career, and hobbies, then maybe there's hope for all of us. But probably don't do as much cocaine as Bear did first. Thank you for watching.